Welcome, dear friends of Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Tonight I am taking you into a scene that could have been written in the margins of a love story, a night stitched together with emotion, timing, and a quiet kind of fate that seems to whisper rather than shout. Before we dive in, remember to subscribe, hit the like button, and above all support Turkish Spotlight Secrets by tapping subscribe, because your support keeps this luminous universe of celebrities and intimate moments alive and breathing. Now settle in, because this is the night when Sıla Turkoglu chose to greet the new year and open a different doorway in her life beside Halil Ibrahim Ceyhan, wrapped in an atmosphere so delicate and spellbinding that guests actually paused mid-breath when they felt it unfold. Everyone expected a celebration, but this was not just another gathering in a glittering calendar. For Sıla, this evening felt like a threshold, the quiet edge between what used to be and what was forming quietly on the horizon. For weeks, she had left hints for those who knew where to look, hushed clips of rehearsals, soft laughter from a makeup chair, a gloved hand grazing fabric swatches, a half frame of a glass clinking, a grin that seemed to hold a secret behind its warmth. Fans noticed the rhythm of her post shift. Her friends teased her in the comments with the kind of light that only comes when happiness is real and close. Something was building, and although everyone sensed it, no one imagined how far that promise would travel by the time the candles were smoke and the night air cool on the terrace. The venue was a salon tucked inside a discreet boutique hotel at the edge of the city, where the noise of traffic becomes a hush and the air carries the scent of pine and polished wood. Private, but not cold. When the double doors opened, the glow inside felt like a living thing. Lamps turned low, their shades draping a honeyed light against satin walls. Table arrangements with white roses and slivers of green created a quiet garden beneath the ceiling. Fragrant candles cast slow-moving shadows that made you believe time had agreed to drift at half speed, just long enough for the heart to catch up to what the eyes were seeing. It felt crafted for a secret to be kept and then revealed, for a promise to be made without the need for thunder. The murmur of guests softened at the same moment the music swelled ever so slightly. And there she was. Sıla, at the threshold, framed by the doorway like a scene cut from a film you would rewind just to see once more. She wore an ivory dress that seemed almost weightless, a line that skimmed and flowed with every step, her shoulders bare, the fabric shimmering like a whisper each time she moved. Her hair hung in tender waves that brushed her collarbone, a natural softness that made her look both ethereal and grounded. Her makeup, subtle and warm, brought a glow to her eyes without shouting for attention. Pearly studs glinted just enough to echo the candlelight. She looked like a woman who knew what she wanted and who she was, a modern romantic with a steady spine. Moments later, the other half of the evening story arrived by her side. Halil entered in a tailored black suit with no tie, his white shirt open at the neck in a way that felt both effortless and intentional. He had that ease about him, the kind you cannot teach, and yet the very first thing he did was look at Sıla. There was pride in it, and tenderness, and a long-running understanding that made words unnecessary. Fingers grazed, then clasped. They walked in together to a song that mattered to her, and that detail alone seemed to say everything they needed to say. The applause rolled through the room, phones rose like stars, a dozen angles caught a dozen expressions. The first clips hit the internet within minutes, and even before the night had found its center, it was already rewriting itself as one of those evenings people pretend to have always known would bloom. Do not forget, while we float through this, to support Turkish Spotlight Secrets in the comments and tell us who you would love to see featured next, because each voice keeps us reaching for the scenes that make your heart lean in and listen. Inside the salon, laughter came in warm bursts. There were quick embraces stolen at the edge of the room, shared jokes in corners, a hand resting on a shoulder for just a beat longer than casual. A kind of language unfolded between them that did not belong to gossip or rumor but to two people who have survived the revolving door of attention and still managed to reserve something sacred for themselves. Yet the tone of the evening shifted at once when the lights lowered in unison, like an inhale that had been planned. The music softened into a familiar melody, and all heads turned toward the double doors, now opening again for a procession that moved slowly and surely toward the center of the room. The cake was tall and graceful and pale as snow, 3 tiers of understated elegance with no flourishes to distract from its calm confidence. No filigree words, no gilded phrases. Only a name, centered in delicate script, a quiet declaration that would live in photos for years, Sıla Turkoglu. It felt like the visual echo of a belief she has lived with for some time now, that simplicity is its own kind of courage, that authenticity is a practice, and that strength can be quiet and decisive. But the cake was not the end of the moment, it was a curtain rising on what Halil had arranged. He moved toward her with a steadiness that did not hide the slight shake in his breath. The room grew still, and if you were close enough you could see how his hand found hers, not to guide but to anchor. He began speaking, and the words felt as if he had rehearsed them for weeks and yet was discovering them only now as he said them aloud. He told her that entering this new year side by side was no small thing for him, that joy sits in ordinary mornings and long days and unglamorous time spent together. He promised that wherever the road bends, he would be there, not as a shadow, not as a myth, but as her real and daily companion. He called her his calm in the storm and the laugh he waits for when the set lights go out. Some eyes glazed over, some smiled into their palms. Many phones shook in hands that were trying to record and wipe tears at the same time. When the candles were lit, she closed her eyes just long enough to gather a wish. She exhaled, a soft sweep of breath, and as the candles surrendered to smoke, Halil pulled her close with a tenderness that did not need to ask permission. The kiss that followed sent the room alight with applause. The cheer rose, not rowdy, but full, like relief. And just like that, the year did not simply begin, it unfurled for them as something new shared between two people who, for all the cameras, had managed to keep this feeling theirs. Outside the room, the internet did exactly what the internet does. Within minutes, clips crossed timelines and stitched together highlights into stories. The captions poured in. "A fairy tale you can actually believe in," wrote one. "Starting the year watching Love Be Brave," wrote another. By the hour, views climbed, and comments braided into one of those moments where fans argue and agree and mostly just revel in seeing two people be real with each other. The night could have ended there, but it did not. Once the noise settled into a hum again, Sıla stepped forward to address the room. The gratitude came out first, a beam in her voice that moved from friend to friend and then into everyone's phones. She paused, took one long breath, and looked at Halil in a way that drew the space around them softer. She said she was opening a chapter she had been carrying in her pocket for a while, both in her life and in the work that fulfills her. She said that she does not rush what matters, that she lets the important things prove themselves by staying. And then she said the sentence that cracked the night open and sent it echoing into every hallway of social media. She said that she had said yes to a steady, enduring, grounded commitment. For a beat, silence. Then a lift of hands and applause that came from the belly rather than the throat. Some guests covered their mouths. Others looked for telltale signs on her hands, the subtle glint, the kind of private detail that lifts paper thin between public and personal. The theories arrived in waves. Some whispered engagement. Some whispered wedding already set. Some whispered that the answer had been written weeks ago, and the reveal was the gift of this new year. Halil wrapped her in his arms, not as a show, but as a seal. The image of them under the warm lights, on that terrace where the night air was kind, spread like a gentle fire. Friends shot a photo that everyone would save. Sıla leaned into his shoulder, he held her with a protective arm around her waist. "New era, new beginning," wrote the friend who posted it first, and the words traveled as if they had been waiting for someone to finally say them. What does a moment like that do to people watching from their couches, from their phones propped on pillows, from long rides home after a late shift? The answer is simple and not simple at all. It allows those who cheer for them to feel seen in the idea that love can be promised in a quiet room without fanfare, and that two people can choose each other in a way that does not need spectacle, even if the world is watching through glass screens. It invites the skeptics to soften, if only for a night. It brings out the storytellers in all of us. There were toasts after that. Not the kind where you shout over music, but the kind where voices lower and sentences stretch. Colleagues spoke about work, about long hours and the way respect builds on sets and in silence. Friends spoke about patience and laughter and how these two have a way of listening to each other even in a crowd. Someone remembered a rainy day when plans were ruined and they were happier soaked than they would have been dry. Someone else recalled how they wove a routine out of chaos when everything around them was shifting like sand. Each memory added another thread to a tapestry already sturdy enough to hold the weight of the night. You could feel it as the room exhaled, as the songs changed, as the candles burned down to their halos. Not every story lets you see its middle while it is still being written. Tonight did. You could imagine them the next morning, hair undone, clothes folded on chairs, coffee cooling on a window ledge, eyes still heavy and bright. You could imagine them reading the comments, laughing at the predictions, texting the photo back and forth as if they needed proof that it was real and not a dream caught by someone else's lens. And if you have followed them long enough, you know why this felt different. It was not loud. It did not lean on sparks to make its case. It leaned on history and choice and the quiet courage of showing up day after day. That is why the cake was simple. That is why the dress flowed instead of shouting. That is why his shirt was unbuttoned just enough to breathe. All of it was a language, and all of it said the same thing in different words. We are here. We choose this. We choose it again. Now it is your turn, devoted viewers of Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Tell us what you read between the lines of this night. Do you believe that her words mark an engagement waiting in the wings, or is it a promise already sealed in private, now gently shared with those who have watched this story unfold over time? Your thoughts build the very bridge between this room and yours. So write to us. Join the conversation. And let your voice be part of the echo that stretches this scene a little bit longer across the dawn. Do not forget to subscribe, to like, to share. If you can, support the channel by tapping subscribe. Because that small gesture keeps us close to the rooms where hearts speak like this. From everyone at Turkish Spotlight Secrets, thank you for keeping us company through an evening stitched with tenderness and resolve. We will be back with the next revelation when it arrives, and until then we hold this image in our minds, the two of them at the edge of the terrace light, the city beyond them, the years stepping forward while they hold still, together, and let the moment last just a little while longer.